Welcome to the video for 8.6 day 1. Today we're going to learn how to factor trinomials that have a leading coefficient. So a number besides 1 in front of the x squared. We're going to be doing this lesson into 2 days because this can be a little bit more involved in the process. So let's start off by talking about the new method called slide, divide, bottoms up. Before using the slide, divide, bottoms up method, you want to make sure to see if you can factor anything out of the trinomial before using the method. So that's your first blank that you want to fill in. Always check to see if you can factor anything out first. Now, once you have factored out something, or maybe it's not necessary to factor out anything at all, what you're going to do is make sure that all 3 of these conditions are satisfied or met. The first thing is the degree must be 2. AKA it's a quadratic function. The number of terms is 3, called a trinomial, and the coefficient of the squared term is greater than 1. So the number in front of the x squared is not a 1, it's a 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So the number in front is not a 1. That is the difference between today's lesson and the previous section, 8.5. Remember, in 8.5, the leading coefficient was always 1. Today, the leading coefficient will never be 1. It's always 2, 3, etc. So these 3 conditions must be met in order to use the slide, divide, bottoms up method. Okay, here we go. The form is going to be ax squared plus bx plus c. The new part is, the first step is slide. Slide the first number, whatever's in the a spot, all the way to the end, to the c. So what you're going to do in your x, draw your x, and then in the top part, you're going to write a times c. So this time, what we're going to do is figure out what numbers multiply to get whatever number a times c is. And then the b, whatever that number is, always goes to the bottom. That's not new. That's actually from last section as well. The steps to factoring success are slide and multiply, divide and reduce the fractions, and last part, bottoms up. That means the bottom or denominator of each fraction goes in front of the variable. Bottom of fraction goes in front of variable. And I'll show you what I mean. Pause here if you need to fill in these blanks. Otherwise, we will take a look at our first example. 7x squared plus 29x plus 4. Please take note that the number in front is not a 1. So first thing is circle the 7 and draw an arrow to the 4. So we are sliding. That's the very first step. When you slide, the x squared comes down, the 29x comes down, and now we have 28 because 4 times 7 is 28. Now we're ready to use the x method because the number in front of the x squared is now a 1. So take the 28 is at the end, put it up top. So we're going to multiply 2 numbers to get 28 and add to get 29. So remember, the number at the end goes up top and the number in the middle goes on bottom always. Now let's talk about factors of 28. The factors of 28, we can put them on the side, are 1 and 28, 2 and 14, and 4 and 7. Notice that all the numbers are positive, so that means our numbers in the blank spaces are also going to be positive. And now we have to add the factors to get 29. Hopefully the first pair is popping out to you because that is the pair that works. When you multiply, you get 28, but when you add, you get 29. So take those 2 numbers, the 1 and the 28, and put them in the parentheses. This is a review from the previous lesson. X plus 1, x plus 28. All right, slide is done. Now divide. Divide by the number that you slide. So I'm going to write that down the side, and I want you to do the same. Divide by the number you slide. And conveniently, if it won't flip to the next page with me, that is the number that you circled in the beginning. So I'm hoping that 7 is really popping out to you right now. So divide by 7 to both numbers. You're always going to divide by the leading coefficient, the number that you circled and you slid. Okay. Now, reduce the fractions. 1/7 cannot be reduced, but 28 over 7 can. To 4. The very last step, bottoms up. Take the 7 and put it in front of the x. Now, the other part, technically there's a 1 under the 4. Obviously, you can bring the 1 in front, but it doesn't do anything. So, bottoms up. That means the bottoms of the fractions go in front of the variables. 7x plus 1, and we don't need to change the x plus 4. We have just factored a trinomial with a leading coefficient other than 1, which is awesome. Pause here if you need to, rewind, etc., and we will do our first official example. What is the factored form of 5x squared plus 11x plus 2? First thing, we want to slide. So I'm going to rewrite this. Slide the 5, circle the 5, and slide it over to the 2. So that means we have x squared plus 11x plus 5 times 2, which is 10. Now we're ready for the x. Take the 10, put it up top, take the 11, put it in the bottom. We need to figure out numbers that multiply to get 10, but add to get 11. So that's why in our table right here we have factors of 10, which are 1 and 10, and 2 and 5. Now we just need to add them. 1 plus 10 is 11, and 2 plus 5 is 7. This pair works because we wanted to figure out numbers that multiply to get 10 but add to get 11. So take the 1 and the 10 and put them in the blank spaces right here. Now we're going to have x plus 1 times x plus 10. So we did the sliding. Now we must divide by the number that we slid earlier. So divide by the number you slide. So divide by 5. And see if you can reduce either of the fractions. The first fraction cannot be reduced. However, the second fraction can. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So now all we have to do is take the 5 bottoms up. The 5 goes in front. The 1 stays there. And the next term does not change because the bottom under the 2 is just a 1 and doesn't do anything. So the factor form of this trinomial is 5x plus 1 times x plus 2. Now, if you ever get stuck and you think that you did something wrong, you can check by using the FOIL method or the table method. And I won't show you because I know you know how to do that by now. But I wanted to remind you that you always have that at your convenience if you're ever stuck. So just a second ago, we factored a trinomial that all had positive numbers. Now in the next example, yes, we're going to bring in a negative, but don't worry, we can do this together. The very first thing that I want to do is rewrite the original trinomial. And I want to circle the first number, the 3, and slide it over to the negative 15. So now we're going to have x squared plus 4x minus 3 times 15 is 45. So now we're ready for the x method. Take the negative 45, put it up top, and take the 4, put it on bottom. Lovely. Take the 4, put it on bottom. We need to figure out two numbers that multiply to get negative 45, but add to get 4. So let's talk about negative 45. It's a negative number. So that means the numbers that we're multiplying must be one of each sign, must be a positive and negative in order to get a negative. Factors of negative 45, 1 and negative 45, negative 1 and positive 45, 3 and negative 15, negative 3 and positive 15, 5 and negative 9, negative 9, and, sorry, I said that wrong, negative 5, and positive 9. Now we just need to add. That's what sum means. So when we add these, we get negative 44, we get positive 44, we get negative 12, we get positive 12, negative 4, and positive 4. This pair multiplies to get negative 45, but adds to get positive 4. So take those two numbers and put them in the blank spaces, negative 5 and 9. Now we're going to use those numbers in our sets of parentheses. The x's always goes first. Now put the negative 5, put the positive 9. I know it feels like we're done, but we're not because the leading coefficient was not 1. So now we must divide by the number that we slide. So divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. Now we need to figure out if we can reduce either of these fractions. The 5/3 cannot be reduced. However, the 9/3 can be reduced to 3. Very last step, bottoms up. Take the 3, put it in front. So we have 3x minus 5 times x plus 3. The second term did not need to have the bottom going up because it was a 1. And there's our answer. 3x minus 5 times x plus 3. So what you just did, we factored a trinomial that had positive numbers, and we also factored a trinomial that had positive and negative numbers. We're going to stop there for today's lesson so that we don't get overwhelmed. I do want you to try these lesson check problems. Take a whack at them. If you're confused, wait until tomorrow. Otherwise, you must make sure you have done 8.5 Day 2 lesson check. I will help you out and help you figure out how to do these tomorrow.